my situation was just not, it was not the best. So like if you're listening to this and you went to 5 schools and your mom was struggling and had an apartment where you had to sleep in the living room and all these things, and you lose 2 years of college, like you said, those could all be excuses for being a bad person or being, not finishing school or all these things. So I don't want anyone ever to be faced with that decision, because every day it was a tough decision to be like poor me and go down a path of something undesirable or continue to be in pursuit. But if you find yourself in a tough situation where the decision is imminent of who you want to be and what you want to do, just look inward.
Today I'm here with Art Morrison III, who is the founder and CEO of United Home Relief. He's an entrepreneur whose career has been defined by betting on himself, from pursuing professional basketball against the odds to building businesses focused on helping people through major life transitions. Thanks so much for joining us today, Art.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to yap it up.
Well, I'd like to jump right into the decision around whether or not you were going to pursue playing basketball professionally. So can you talk to us a little bit about what was going on at the time? I think you were injured.
Yeah, so like going into playing college basketball, like every basketball player ever, the goal was always to play professionally. Ideally, you want NBA, but I was familiar from like previous family members of the idea of going to play in Europe. And that always intrigued me because my family wasn't the kind of family to ever even leave the country. So, that ended up being my goal, especially once I realized that the NBA probably wasn't in the cards. My senior year, I ended up tearing my ACL. I was hurt. So naturally, it's like, okay, that dream's dead. Time to apply for jobs and figure out what career you're going to pursue other than basketball. And that's where I had to make a really difficult decision if I wanted to like double down on, hey, I don't care that I can't walk. I'm submitting my application, if you will, overseas to play basketball like I dreamed, or if I'm, taking the safe route and just getting a corporate job.
So how much effort to that point of your life have you put into basketball? Like, were you the type that had been playing, club ball, or what did that look like, all the prep?
Yeah, basketball for me was the only thing that I was even a little bit good at, and I wasn't even that great like growing up. So football, it wasn't like I was like this all around athlete and I had a choice really. It was like baseball. I remember I got hit with a pitch and I was like 10 years old. I was crying and everything. I was like, nah, this ain't for me. Like they can just throw the ball and it hit you. Like, nah, I don't like this one. Football, same thing. It was like, you might not get the ball for X amount of possessions and you're just hitting people all game. I didn't like that either. So basketball was it for me. I had an extreme passion for it. But again, I wasn't like that good. I think I was like kind of tall for my age, but I had like big goofy glasses and I think I was bigger than like I wasn't coordinated, right? Like I didn't have full control over my body yet. 8th, 9th grade is when I kind of got good at basketball. So that's when it was like, all right, like, and you start to kind of have these dreams of like playing professionally, playing in college, right? The lure of, getting a scholarship and all that like really consumed me. And that's when I sort of like went all in on like, this is what I'm doing. So I was pretty dedicated year round, no other sports, joining various clubs, training nonstop. Everyone knew where to find me. I was at the court all day long. That it started to become my identity around 9th, 10th grade.
Getting your 10,000 hours, as they say.
Exactly. Putting that work in.
And so how did you get the idea that you even had a potential of playing professionally or that you could get a scholarship in college? What started making you think that you actually might have a chance at this?
That's a really good question. I don't think anyone ever asked me that. So I'm excited to answer it. It's like, it's like 30% delusion. But if I'm being honest, I'm a very logical person. Some would argue too logical. It's like my gift and my curse. And the logic was, okay, I'm 6'5" in high school. I'm 190 pounds. This is like the same size as a lot of people who make it to the NBA, right? Like my favorite player at the time, Kobe Bryant, was 6'6", 205 pounds. So for me, it just was, okay, if I have a body that can make it at that level, like it's just about obtaining the skill, right? That's like how my logical, like partially delusional brain worked at the time. So I had full conviction because it was like, this is just a matter of obtaining enough skill. Everybody's not blessed to be like, now I'm 6'7", like I grew obviously like even now, when people see me in the street, they assume that I play professional basketball because I just have that build. But I recognized that early. I was like, man, like everybody doesn't have this going for them. And the people who do aren't like they were like tripping over their feet. You know what I mean? Like someone who's like tall at that age is like kind of goofy. I was fairly coordinated. And I was like, man, like when they're doing this stuff on TV, I can kind of do that by myself at the park. And I don't know anyone else my size who can do that. There's an opportunity here. And so it was just a matter of like pursuing it. And I think my circle at the time like was really helpful. When I say circle, I mean even just friends. Like I think they were aware of that as well, right? Like when you're a kid playing basketball and you start to like hit puberty and realism starts to set in. You could be a 5'11" basketball player. You could be the best on the team. But that person, that kid knows like NBA pro probably ain't in the cards because there's no one that is my size. So there was even players that were better than me that could look at me and be like, yeah, like you have a chance just because of body, build, whatever. And that was helpful as well. Like that, like I said, that 30% delusion, 70% basic logic of like, okay, just get really skilled, dedicate the hours towards getting skilled and you might have a shot.
I think the delusion plays an important role in a lot of
Yeah.
advancements, right? The people who are crazy enough to try something or take a risk, they're the ones who change the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it changed their lives, right? Or just have experiences that other people just don't. And I was down for those experiences. That was like my whole thing, still is.
And so when you started communicating that this might be something you wanted to pursue, what were I mean, you said your friend group seemed to be like, yeah, we could see you doing that. But what about the adults, the practical people? Did they
Yeah.
encourage or dissuade, or how did that look?
Yeah, laughter. And I don't even mean like, all right, so I'll give two examples. My coaches, right? Like these are like the basketball experts. These are the coach. My high school coach, who was an amazing coach. I wrote about this in my book, but I remember that he had a relationship with a college coach and it was a Division 3 school. Just a brief update. If anyone doesn't understand colleges, there's Division 3, Division 2, and Division 1. Division 1 is what you watch on TV. March Madness, right? Anything lower is just sort of like a lower level of competition, if you will. So he had a relationship with a local Division 3 school that wanted me really bad. And he really wanted me to take that opportunity. And I knew that opportunity conflicted with my goal. I'm like, man, I got to get to like Division 2. I really think I'm Division 1. I think I just need more time, really. So I actually ended up deciding to do what they call a postgraduate year, which is essentially like an extra year of high school, like a prep year. And remember he said flat out, like, why are you going to do that? Like, what's the point of doing that? You don't think you're going to get a scholarship or something? Exact words. And in his logical brain, I wasn't like the star player. I didn't score 1,000 points in high school. Like, I get why he was saying that, right? But he wasn't looking from a perspective of like a kid with goals and work ethic and the right body type and all the things I just said previously. So I don't fault him for it. But I'll never forget that because it was like, what do you mean I won't get a scholarship? We actually had a player on the team who did get a scholarship and we were kind of identical. The only thing that was different was I was injured in high school. I think he played more and I think that he reached his peak skill set sooner than me. Like I truly felt I just need more time. We didn't mention this. I don't even think I shared this with you, but in high school, I actually went to 5 high schools, including that postgraduate year. So my parents were getting divorced, financial struggles. This is like 7, 08, 09 time. So a lot of families in America were affected by this. But as a result, I ended up like moving a lot. So I was never anywhere for a long enough period of time to even gain reputation or exposure. And I also was aware of this as well. So that the coach that gave me that feedback, he had coached me for two seasons, like 2 years, but he didn't see me like grow up. He didn't see me go from being terrible in 7th grade with the glasses to being, like an important player in his lineup to a senior, right? He didn't see the growth. He didn't necessarily see the work ethic. So like I said, I didn't fault him so much. Fast forward to college, obviously when I was hurt and I was in contact with, not just for the story, but, like some like professional teams even. I mentioned it to my coach. I remember it was my head coach, my assistant coach, and the women's basketball coach actually. And they like chuckled when I said it. And I was dead serious. They were like, so what are you going to do? This was like after graduation. I had like our final meeting. We're just sitting, chopping it up. I'm on my crutches. And they're like, so what are you going to do? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to go. I kind of just shared my dreams and they were like, they chuckled because of some stuff I'm sure we'll get into. But even in college, I ended up only actually playing 2 seasons because I was injured later in my senior season. And freshman year, I had some other drama. So I'm sure we'll dive into. But yeah, so all these things that I had to overcome required delusion in order to overcome them. Like delusion was a requirement. Without it, it would have just been a common story.
It's interesting, the insight that you had, and I guess I'm formulating this thought, this fine line between excuses and really understanding your circumstances. So, like, understanding that I moved a lot, I didn't have consistency, I know I still have potential, I can go somewhere with this, versus those just being excuses. You know, you did something with that.
Yeah, great point. It's funny because excuses are always an opportunity to like every time you reach an obstacle, there's an opportunity there, and it can become an excuse in your story or your movie, as I like to call it, or it can be like a turning point. And I just think we're not here forever. The idea of turning those into like pinnacles and turning points and climaxes in a story, if you imagine your life as a movie, like that's way cooler. You know what I mean? Than like, oh, like this happened because it's going to be an excuse regardless, right? But like other people can make them, like my mom will tell you right now, if you had her on this show, she'd be like, yeah, like if he wouldn't have went to, if my situation was better, I feel like I could have done more right by my son. He would have gone further, had a better career, right? Like she says that to me all the time, but I let her make the excuse. For me, like that would have been the start of a life of excuses as like a 16-year-old kid who's like can identify like something that doesn't go his way and use it as a means to like get out of a goal. Like, what is that, right? And I had a lot of friends like that. Oh, the coach doesn't like me, or it's because this guy's taller. Oh, politics, right? You see that all the time in sports, and it really separates the boys from the men, if you will, as it pertains to like growth in the sport, or even if you just playing time, right? Or just like high school career only, even, right? Like you just, I later went on to coach basketball, and you just see it all the time. The players who like sink into excuses have less growth than those who are like, okay, another thing for me to overcome, another thing for me to conquer.
Yeah, you can only control what's in your control, and so sitting there and complaining about those things outside of your control isn't going to make any difference. It's focusing on what you can change and what you can do with your circumstances. It's very
Absolutely.
insightful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I would love to hear then how it was going as you were wrapping up in college, like how your basketball career, performance was going. You just mentioned you weren't playing very much, but you still had this thought in your head. So how was it going, and what was going on in your head during that time?
Yeah, let's talk about college. It's pretty insane. So remember when I told you I went and did that postgraduate year, that extra year? Well, I don't even, I can't explain what happened exactly because you would have to ask them. But I'm going to say it in a common way that most people today in 2026 would understand. The school that I went to didn't do what was necessary to be credible, or maybe they ran out of funding or whatever the case was. So as a result, I actually ended up losing a year of eligibility, excuse me, losing a year of eligibility in college, meaning when I went into college, the NCAA said, hey, this school that you attended, and it could have been my fault. Maybe I just submitted information wrong. Like, I don't know. First in my family to go to college, didn't really have help, right? So, but basically they're like, hey, this school you went to doesn't really seem like a school. It doesn't meet the requirements of amateurism. It almost really sounds like professional basketball. So we're not going to recognize it as a school. We're going to recognize it as a year of either like college, like collegiate or professional basketball. So you're only going to get 3 years of NCAA eligibility, and the 3 years doesn't start until next season. So you have to sit a year. You cannot play this year. So I had to sit that whole freshman year. So like that was a year of points. That was a year of experience. That was a year of so much that could have like made my career go better. Right. So I bring my mom up again. Like there's even a level of guilt there of like, man, like if we would have just did what we had to do, if we could have given him a stable situation in high school, he wouldn't have had to do the postgraduate, that whole thing. But long story short, I didn't play at all freshman year. Like literally I had zero freshman year. My freshman year was my sophomore year. Had a good sophomore year, a good junior year. And all of my teammates knew I was a good player. Like I hit the ground running immediately. And that was also reassurance for me, everything that I shared with you of like my size and my ability and this and that. So at this point, I didn't necessarily need delusion, right? At this point, it started to be like a material fact that like I kind of had what it took to play at the next level. I think most people I played with also would agree, like, okay, if anybody's going to go play at the next level, it's probably going to be him. And that's not to say I was just like so freaking good. It just was the way in which I played. It was like a very, like a professional way. But then my senior year came and 4 games in, or it might have been 8 games in, I ended up tearing my ACL. Right? ACL and meniscus. So I virtually had no senior year either. So I only had my sophomore and junior year to reference when essentially applying for teams professionally. And that's when, from a college perspective, it became, I guess, what you would call unrealistic to play professionally. And that became like really the final obstacle that I had to overcome to make that, like, make my dream like finally be a reality. And because I had invested so many years into it, like I just wasn't gonna let it stop me, you know? So like college went well, definitely
Mm.
could have gone probably 100% better. You know, like I made the best of it, you know?
Yeah. And then how did you get injured and what point was this? Was it like the last, the end of the season of your final year, or yeah, how was
No,
that?
the beginning. So you typically will play like 25 to 30 games, depending on playoffs and stuff. We were 8 games in, right? So yeah, it was the 8th game. I think we were like 4-3 at the time or something. And no, because we won that game. But whatever our record was, I think we were like 4-4. I don't know. We were like doing okay, but I'll never forget that game. We scored like 100 and something points. My team played really well, but somewhere in the second or third quarter, I tore my knee. I knew it was torn immediately. You know, anyone who's ever torn a ligament, like you just know. Like you feel the pop, you just know, like I'm done. And yeah, like at that moment, I knew it was going to be some sort of journey. It's weird because I knew it was torn at that moment, but then I was weirdly like kind of walking later. Like I something about my body biologically, I recovered pretty quickly. So I actually started to recover like before the surgery. And I was like, maybe it's not torn. Like we actually went and we got like a second opinion MRI because it was like, you're not even walking with a limp. I don't believe that this is a fully torn ACL, but it ended up being torn. That was December 16th, 2012.
And so did you get to play at all again that season?
No, that was it. Done for the season. Yeah, ACL recovery is typically 6 to 8 months, so it was over after that.
So did you really only get one season of full playing then in college?
Yeah, 2 sophomore year and
Okay.
junior year, and then senior year I played 8 games, so I like virtually 2 seasons, really.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you were injured, you're healing. Was there any sort of advice from the doctor of you shouldn't play anymore? Or, I mean, did that play into the decision you were making of should I pursue this full time or should I go corporate?
Yeah, another amazing question. With an ACL injury, they just repair it and then you got to heal, right? And you got to do rehab. So my college career was over. There was no one advised me like not to play. However, the way it lined up, my surgery was January 22nd, 2013. So they're like 6 to 8 months recovery. Like you'll be good to go full speed in August. Typically, when you go play professional basketball, you leave in August, and right, or your contract starts in August typically. So again, I knew it was delusional to pursue that, but I also felt like I could recover quicker. So after surgery, when we started rehab, this is when it started to become a reality because even the doctors were like, wow, you're recovering really quickly. Or, wow, it's amazing that you can do this at this point. This is more of a 5-month thing. You're doing it at 3, right? So when I started to get those signals, that's when I started to say, no, I'm going to fully recover. So things like running, even walking at a certain speed, lifting a certain amount of weight while I was rehabbing, started to signal very clearly like, hey, you're going to recover quickly. And I ended up like May, you graduate. And I think I had like a showcase, like a basketball showcase at the end of May. And I ended up playing it and getting, I ended up losing MVP, but I got like second votes in MVP. I had like some overseas showcase. And it was the first time I had played in like an actual game since I tore it, since surgery. So like it was a huge gamble, but I'm like, yo, if something happens, like I'm back to where everyone's telling me I should be at anyway, right? Like I have to pursue this. And yeah, ended up working out. I was able to get some recognition from an agent in Portugal who ended up not helping me at all, but it showed me that I had interest in that country and that happened to be the country I ended up playing in.
And so, when it sounded like the decision that was faced in front of you was, I'm not going to have a foot in both camps where I try to find a job and I try to pursue basketball. Is that what it was? Like, were you really like, I've got to focus on one or the other?
I was in the bed with a leg wrapped up probably 100 times with gauze and whatnot. And I got my laptop because I'm a senior, so all my friends and peers are applying for jobs. I'm like, I'm time for me to do the same thing. Why not? And I was a communications major, so one of the jobs that I applied for or was applying for was like an internship or something with like the Brooklyn Nets broadcasting. And for those watching, the Brooklyn Nets in 2012 were not only a new franchise, but they were the worst franchise in the NBA history. Like they had just came off the worst season in NBA history. They only won like just a few games out of 82. It was insane. And I was like, man, I'm applying to be an intern for the worst team in the NBA while my goal was to play in some way, shape, or form professionally. Like, this is stupid. And I literally, like, that day, that was the last job that I applied for. I closed my laptop and I was like, man, I ain't doing that. I could take this same time and energy, focus on my mental, focus on rehabbing, focus on making connections in the basketball space. Like, that same time and energy could go towards a goal that I actually want to pursue, and not like, the what do you call it when you like kind of, and this is no shot to anyone, but like almost a herd mentality of like, okay, you're a senior, like time to apply for jobs and kind of get into that corporate ladder space. I always knew that I wanted something differently, even if not playing professional basketball. Later on, it became entrepreneurship, but I was like, nah, I'm not doing this. Like, it's not me. It doesn't fit. I have my whole life to do that.
And so when you were sitting there and you've made this decision of I'm going to go all in on basketball, what was at stake?
Making a living. I think, even in college, I already explained, like, family was kind of struggling in high school. College was not really any different. I think by the time I was a senior, my like mom was doing better. My dad was in prison for about half of the time I was in college, and they were together at the time. So most of my college years, I was staying on campus. Like, I wouldn't go home in the summer, right? I got connected with like a summer camp that they did for basketball that was ironically for like European kids, and it was ran by a coach from overseas. That was also a signal and some feedback that I had a little bit of what it takes, because he would bring in guys from overseas to train them and he would allow me to jump in. And I didn't see much difference between us, right? So that was also a signal over the summers. I'm always forever grateful for that mentorship and that opportunity. But bigger than that, at the time, it was, I needed a place to stay for the summer. Like, I didn't have I didn't have like, really, my mom didn't have a room for me really, right? Until I think like my senior year. I think she had got a new apartment or something, but neither here nor there. Everything was at stake. It was like, what are you going to do after college? I was blessed after I graduated to stay with the girl I was seeing at the time, just kind of crash with her. She helped me, like, reach out to teams overseas and stuff like that. But everything was at stake.
Uh, do you think you would have, how much time would you have lost if you had been pursuing basketball and it didn't come to fruition? Or how long would you have kept pursuing it until you said this isn't going to work?
I think that, man, you have such amazing questions. It wasn't about time. Even in hindsight, I could argue that I didn't spend enough time. I see people now from that era of my life still playing, and we can dive into that a little bit of why I stopped and stuff. But what I didn't know at the time was that the journey was just beginning. And my grit and what I did to get overseas was amazing, and it opened a door, and I sort of assumed that more doors would automatically open because I'm now in the room. And the grind that comes after that, and anyone who's ever played, professionally overseas, is different. And so it never crossed my mind that, like, hey, this may be a waste of time, because, like I said, any athlete, I don't care if you're Michael Jordan, you can't play forever. You can push papers forever. You can make phone calls forever. You can't play a sport forever, and definitely not and be compensated for it, right? So I knew that, like, it's all, in every universe, it's worth a shot. In every universe, it's worth a shot to give this my all. If I don't give it my all, if I'm kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, applying for jobs, it's not going to work. This is the time. Whether I'm 23 or 25, a job is still going to look at my resume and make a decision, right? But the difference in those years, I would have to go to sleep at night knowing I didn't give my all to a dream I had since I was in 6th grade, right? And I think a lot of people live with that, and they live with regret. For me, it wasn't about the time. It was just about not living with that regret right there of like, man, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, the rest of my life. Man, I was good. I didn't get injured. It was like what you said earlier about excuses. It was like, man, these excuses could be null and void in the story if I just freaking make it, right? And
Well, no,
that's what
and
I
that's
did.
another, I think, really wise, moment on your part to frame it that way, in the sense of, well, what's the worst that could happen? You don't get to play basketball, but you tried and you don't have regret. And like you said, it's a year or 2 years later, and you'll probably still be able to find the same types of jobs. But you can't go work for 5 years and then try to go back to basketball.
Can't do it.
So, yeah, so
My girlfriend
understanding, yeah.
hates how logically I think, but that's just how my brain has always worked. It's like consider the alternative. Like you're just weighing options. Okay, I'm here. I got a bum knee, but I want to play in Europe. If I try to play in Europe and I fail, I can still get a job. If I get a job now while trying to right, like the alternative didn't lead to the goal. This one at least had a chance at the goal. So it was like we're going this route all day.
And when you made the decision that, yep, I'm going to go all in and pursue this, what were you feeling? Like, do you remember the moment? And do you know how you
Yeah.
felt after you made the decision?
Yeah, I didn't even do anything. That's the funny part. Like when I closed that laptop, I just got filled with conviction. Like there was nothing, there wasn't an action after that I did that was like, yeah, this is real. This is gonna happen. I just was like, yo, like I'm doing this. If I like first things first, fix this knee, right? So it was just like, all right, let me just lock in on getting healthy. Let me lock in. I've done this before. That's how I got a scholarship. Like I know how to work hard. Like boom, step one. Step two was like, oh yeah, I just need people to see me. So I just got to get out there and play, right? What showcases are there? Like what are notable ways to be seen? And step three was just to get connected. Like, how do I get connected with agents and teams? And that later became really the main, it ended up just being sales, right? It was like, okay, well, if a player wants to get overseas, like, what's the actual path? Let's pretend I was the best player in the world. Like, what would be the path? Like, how would the teams find me? And once I identified that was the biggest step that I guess you could say replaced applying for corporate jobs. Now it was just applying for jobs overseas, and
Sounds like you really systematically broke that down. Was there, have you always been like that, or is that a learned trait?
I think I've always been like it. Yeah, I think it's actually recent years that I'm realizing I've just always been like that. My family makes fun of me. Like I was the kid whose like room was always not only clean but like organized in a specific way that like matched. I don't know. I was just sort of a weird nerdy kid, like into technology, into computers. Like that's just how it was. It was my original major in college before I switched over to communications. I just always have thought in like a computer, like ones and zeros. So when that time came, it was very similar. It was like, yo, let's remove the emotion from this. Like this is the goal. Like how do we just achieve this goal? Guaranteed. And ended up being sending a whole lot of emails and basically pretending to be my own agent to get one contract offer, one paid contract at least.
And what was that moment like when you finally, you make this decision, you put this effort in, and now you've got a offer on the table?
Yeah, I met a guy actually through my brother. He had played overseas and then was done and was trying to get into like real estate. My older brother was in real estate, so he was kind of mentoring him. And he showed me like the websites and stuff to like get directly in contact with teams. He's like, yo, if you make an account here, this is where all the teams and all the players were and all that. And that probably took, like I told you, I'm tech savvy. So that probably took me a day to make a profile on like 2 or 3 websites and do a little research. And it was a week straight. I'm talking about bumming it. I don't even know if I showered in my girlfriend's apartment at the time, just copy paste. Like I didn't have like a CRM or something to like blast the email. I'm talking about Gmail, copy paste. My email at the time was like artmorrison24@gmail.com. I'm just copy and paste, change to the person's name in the subject, make sure I change the name to the, whatever. And I had a highlight tape that my best friend put together. He was trying to get into videography. I had pictures of me, from the season. I had a nice write up. Like I created like I don't know, like a press kit or like a marketing kit. And I just like all day long. So, yo, I'm sharing that to say that was easy. And that was a week of work, right? Like if I would have gotten a job, they probably would have had me doing something like that anyway. They probably would have had me cold calling or cold emailing anyway at an entry level, fresh out of college, right? So for me, it was just like, all right, 1 week of work. And it sucked. Like it was discouraging. Not the sending part. The sending part was like, yeah, we're going to get a contract. The not getting responses part stunk. The we're not interested at this time stunk. But one day, it's like a Thursday or Friday, I was at a bar with my best friend, just like having a drink, and that email came in. I'll never forget checking my phone, seeing the email. And, when you send out that many emails, you get like auto responses, bounce backs. This one felt real. And I read it, and you could tell it was like poorly translated. And I'm like, yo, is this real? I showed it to him. Like, yo, you think this is real? He's like, it seems pretty real. I did research, looked up on Facebook. I opened my Facebook. I also had a message there from the same guy and like a new follow. He was like the GM of a team, and on Terceira Island in Portugal, and that was all she wrote. I think I got another response, but they wanted me to come, like, basically play for free, and they
Mm.
would give me, like, lodging and stuff. This team was willing to pay me pennies, but they're willing to pay me, fly me out, lodge me, give me transportation, food, and that was the door that opened to playing professionally overseas. By this time, I knew it was a grind. I talked to other people. They told me what was ahead. They told me, "Hey, you ain't about to. This ain't the NBA. It's a grind, but it's totally worth it." And that's what started my career. So that feeling, I'll never forget that night ever. I'll never forget when I got that email. It was like you just feel like it's fake. It's like it's not real, right? It was
Mm.
real.
And so when you reflect on the moment when you're back in bed recovering with your computer, applying for jobs, and you said, nope, not going to do it. What do you think? What would you boil down to the principle that guided that decision?
Like, not to be grim, like death. Like we're not gonna be here forever. So it's like for anyone listening, if you have a goal, and this is gonna sound so cliche, I hate even giving this advice because if you watch any motivational podcast ever, it seems like every person that has achieved any little bit of success gives the same advice, but it's so true. Like if you have a goal, you gotta pursue it with all of your heart. Cause like tomorrow not promised. And even if it is, that tomorrow is going to be filled with regret if you didn't pursue the thing you actually wanted to do. I don't care if it's a job. I don't care if it's a man or a woman you wanted. Like I don't care if there's something that you have a desire for deeply, as deep as a sixth grader who says that I want to do this in 15 years, right? Like that's like you have to pursue it, and that's all that was at the time just consuming me. It was just like, yo, like I would feel crazy if I did not pursue this. I'm going to be, and here's the thing. Remember when I told you that in high school, when I was like 6'5", almost 6'6", 200 pounds, I'm like, oh, there's NBA players with my build, right? That was like a positive. It was like a positive. That was like the carrot of like, pursue this, man. You got the body, you got the build, you can do it. But there's also a negative that comes to it or comes with it. You don't want to be 6'6", 210 pounds with muscles and tattoos, and you're like behind somebody's like, cubicle, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like that was the other thing that consumed me. It was like, I don't know if you ever watched The Incredibles, where the Mr. Incredible, he's massive. He has super strength, and he's behind a cubicle getting bossed around by like the little guy. It was like that. Like, that's what I was envisioning. I'm like, man, you don't want to be the guy where everybody's stopping you and saying, "You play basketball? Oh man, I hope you play basketball with that body," which is I still get that to this day. You don't want to be that and be like, nah, man, I could have maybe, but I got injured in college and that was it. Nah, you don't. I gotta touch the dream, like I gotta touch it a little bit, and that's exactly what I did. I didn't play for I'm not sitting here as like a 15-year vet that played forever and ever. Like I achieved my goal, and that was all I needed.
And so that philosophy of we only have one life, so you better pursue your goals and give it your best shot. Had you applied that to any decisions before in your life?
Before that one,
Mm-hmm.
no, because my life was basketball. So like that was like my whole life was dedicated to it. So that was the only. I'm like, nah, like you got to do
And
it because of this.
and
But
what
I
about
think
after
after
then?
for sure, because I think any success that I've achieved is attributed to that story.
Mm.
And then, the death thing is even in hindsight because my dad ended up passing away in 2015. I remember he was that first year that I played, he'd never been out the country. So he went, he got his passport. He was supposed to come and see me play overseas. And I ended up not finishing out the season with that team. So this was now the off season. I'm working towards getting my next contract. And, he ended up passing away. So he was never able to like A, leave the country or B, even see me play professionally. The last time he was able to see me play was in college. And that's, it wasn't my death, obviously, but it was a loved one. And it was like, yo, like, I remember he went to my dad, he's older, but he had like a old outdated laptop, but he figured out how to go to Best Buy and get a webcam so that he can Skype me while in Europe. And small stuff like that is like what I mean about pursuing the dream. Like he never got to come see me play and stuff like that. But like before he left this earth, he was able to say that my son, let alone plays basketball in Europe, but even lives in Europe.
Mm.
From someone who spent probably 40% of his life in prison and never left the country, right? So like even what that was able to do for him in his last year of life, like that's important. And we don't know when it's going to be our last year, right? So it's even more important that you spend that last moment, which we never know what it's going to be. None of us know, pursuing what you love and what you want to do. Like that's just so important to me. And it became that much more important, obviously, when I actually lost someone.
No, that's really impactful. Well, so now maybe just for our audience, can you give kind of the highlight reel of the outcome of the decision? Like what did the basketball years look like then?
Yeah, the basketball years were amazing. If I didn't come from such a struggle growing up, I'd probably still be doing it. It's a grind. I went and played that first season. I led the league in scoring. I did extremely well. It was a second league in Portugal. We even played some first league teams and I would kick their butt. Like I knew I was good enough, but guys, it ended up being just like any other business or corporate ladder. It was and it's going to ironically sound like an excuse, but it's truly not. There's a lot you have to do to sort of work your way up, right? So yeah, you have to perform, but also your team has to win, right? It's a resume thing. You got to build that resume. Like there's a ladder you got to work up. And that first season, and if you guys are bored, I want you guys to all just Google or TikTok at this point, Instagram, look up like overseas stories. They're absolutely crazy because at the end of the day, we're like paid cash under the table, like to play basketball. Now I'm saying this to say that that season I didn't even finish out. The team needed a point guard, and they basically swindled me into thinking I was going home to visit family on my own dollar, and never. And they just told me to stay home. That was a lesson. I later on ended up getting like scammed by like a fake agent and like losing money. But I did have some cool experiences playing with some amazing players like Draymond Green, Derrick Rose, right? And just off-season pro-ams and leagues and just private workouts even, which was really cool. So I was able to enter this space where I was able to meet a lot of cool people. I lived in Europe and all of that. But after that first season and then a really amazing off-season, I walked away from the basketball thing for all the reasons that I shared on this podcast. I was tired. I achieved the goal. I touched it. And I could no longer do it because I wasn't in a circumstance that allowed me to. And what I mean by that is, when I left to go play in Europe, like my mom was in the same situation, same thing. My dad was like living in a basement apartment, so it wasn't like I was coming home to a comfortable situation and I seen the journey that was ahead of professional basketball. And at this point in my life, after everything I just shared, I've been through, I had to take the same energy that I pursued the dream of basketball with and put that towards financial goals and goals for my family, right? And could I have achieved that playing overseas? Yeah, maybe in like 5 or 10 years, like sure. But the pathway that I saw, it was no longer the path of least resistance to solve this new problem that I had, which we're all experiencing right now, called adulthood, right? So now it's like I'm 24, 25, can't live with your mama no more. You can't mooch off your girlfriend anymore. The European teams are not paying for your lifestyle in the US. So when you come home, a lot of these players still got to get a job until you achieve a certain contract where you either stay there year round or it's just so lucrative that you can pay American prices at home and be ready for your next contract. It starts to become a rat race in itself. And again, that's no excuse. It just was the reality of, do I want to sign up for this after dedicating my whole life to this despite everything I overcame? And the answer was no. And that's when I shifted all that energy to entrepreneurship and ultimately started my own business, United Home Relief, which I ended up starting in 2020, a real estate company. Before that, I had a youth basketball organization doing camps, clinics, after school programs, one-on-one training, teams. That was my first baby that I founded in 2015 and ran until 2022. And now from 2020 until now, I primarily do real estate. So again, just taking the same mentality and I just applied it elsewhere so that I can change the trajectory of my family.
No, and it seems to have served you well. So with
Yeah.
that in mind, the what is the thing, like if somebody was in the same situation as you where they could go all in on something or follow a traditional path, let's say, what's one question they should be asking themselves?
Well, first thing, I'm really hoping and praying that no one's in the same situation as me. My situation was just not, it was not the best. So like if you're listening to this and you went to 5 schools and your mom was struggling and had an apartment where you had to sleep in the living room and all these things and you lose 2 years of college, like you said, those could all be excuses for being a bad person or being, not finishing school or all these things. So I don't want anyone ever to be faced with that decision because every day it was a tough decision to be like poor me and go down a path of something undesirable or continue to be in pursuit. But if you find yourself in a tough situation where the decision is imminent of who you want to be and what you want to do, just look inward. Like, just look super deeply inward. We live in a different time than 2012 when I was faced with these decisions. You can do anything. You can truly do anything. You always could, but now it's like, man, whatever. You could be a singer. You could be a content creator, a producer, like anything in the creative space. You could be a coder. You could whatever it is, with college, without college. A lot of those variables mattered when I was younger. My mom loves that I'm the first one to graduate from college in the family. And now in 2026, it's like you don't even need college. College is even now irrelevant. Saying all this to say, look inward and just listen to that. Everything externally is like, once you start listening to it, it's really hard to stop. Even now as an adult, right? As a 36-year-old man, I'm transparently, everybody watching and listening, I'm still fighting now to recover from all the years that I've listened to external thoughts, external opinions. At some point, I stopped listening inward, and it never serves you guys. It doesn't serve you. So my advice to anybody in that situation or any situation is just stay listening to the voice inside that's telling you with extreme clarity exactly what you need to do. Sometimes it seems delusional, sometimes it seems crazy, but it's always right.
Well, this has been a really insightful conversation, Art. I really appreciate you taking time. If people wanted to learn more about what you do or, find out more about you, where would they do that?
Yeah, the best bet is I think if you go to my website, artmorrison3rd.com, so that's artmorrisonii.com, everything's there. You can get a copy of my book that really goes into detail and of this whole story. It's called Overcome, The Key to Unlocking Your Superhuman. And basically, it's a self-help book that sort of breaks each chapter into a lesson of how not only I made it overseas, like that's like the sub story, but the real story is how I realized that I could do anything. And it's really important to me that everyone realizes that because we truly can. So that's on the website. And then, right now I primarily do real estate. I have a passion for not really so much for real estate, really just for entrepreneurship. But if anybody is pursuing entrepreneurship through real estate, also on that website or on my Instagram, you'll see a ton of resources helping in that space because that ended up being my later pursuit for financial freedom, which is like my new goal, my new getting overseas to play basketball goal. So if anybody's on that same path, you can tap in with me there. I'm always willing to give advice, help, and I have numerous resources, free and paid, to help people get there. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to be on our show.
yeah, thank you so much for reaching out. I had at one point I was like always on shows and podcasts and things of that nature, and then I kind of scaled back recently. So this was a nice refresher to have a cool, candid conversation with someone and go down memory lane. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And to our audience, until next time, make the decision, act on it, be accountable, and stay unstoppable.